This segment will take a look at one of the capital budgeting tools, and that is the payback period. The payback period of an investment is the time that is expected to recover the initial investment amount. It is calculated by taking the initial cost of the investment and dividing by the expected annual net cash flow. And what do we mean by annual net cash flow? That is going to be the expected future cash inflows less any future cash outflows associated with this investment option. It's quite obvious that managers would prefer investing in projects that have a shorter payback period. So let's take a look at an example. ABC is considering buying new machinery. It will be used in its manufacturing operations. The machinery costs $16,000 and is expected to produce the same increase in annual net cash flows of $4,100 per year. The machine is expected to have an 8-year useful life, and no salvage value is expected at the end of the life of the machine. So recall, the formula is to take the cost of the investment and divide by the annual net cash flow. $16,000 initial investment divided by a $4,100 annual net cash flow, payback period is expected to be 3.9 years. When comparing the expected payback period to the useful life of the asset, we can see that it's expected to pay itself off roughly halfway through the asset's life, or roughly at the 4-year mark out of an 8-year useful life. That example assumed that the amount of cash inflows would be the same amount or an even amount each year. However, often expected cash flow increases each year over the life of an investment are not always expected to be even. So let's assume the same machinery purchase or same machinery investment that ABC is considering. Cost of $16,000, 8-year useful life, no salvage value at the end of the asset's life. Instead of having even cash flows, the amount of cash flows each year will be as follows. An overall outflow of $16,000 for the initial purchase in year 0 or at the time of purchase. Year 1, cash flows of $3,000, year 2, cash flows of $4,000, and so on and so forth over the life of the 8 years. So let's go ahead and calculate the payback period with these uneven cash flows. Initial outflow of $16,000 needs to be recouped. We can see that at the end of year 0, $16,000 total cash outflow. In year 1, we will bring in $3,000 of cash flows, still needing to have another $13,000 of cash flows to pay the investment off. Year 2, another $4,000 is expected to come in, another $4,000 towards paying off. Year 3, another $4,000, bringing the amount needed to pay off to $5,000. In year 4, $4,000 will be brought in, leaving us with only $1,000 left to reach payback. That means at some point during year 5, we'll reach the payback period. Year 5's cash flows are expected to be $5,000. Once we get to the $1,000 of the $5,000 cash flows, we will have reached the payback period. So let's figure out what portion of year 5. So we know we're at least 4 years into the asset's life. Then we need $1,000 of the $5,000 cash flows in year 5, or 1,000 divided by 5,000, or 0.2 of year 5 cash flows. So our payback period will be 4 plus another 0.2 years of year 5, or 4.2 years. Thus, the payback period is achieved at 4.2 years into the asset life. The payback period capital budgeting tool is pretty simple to use. However, it does have shortcomings. It ignores cash flows earned after the payback period is reached. Once we reach the payback period, we ignore what happens beyond that. It also ignores the time value of money. And by time value of money, I mean the cash flows that is paid out today is not worth the same as cash flows that will be received next year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years into the future. Because it ignores the time value of money, it is unacceptable for projects that have long lives where the time value of money effects are major. So consider 2 projects. Each have a 5-year life. Each of the projects has an initial investment of $6,000. The projects have cash flows depicted in this chart. In year 5, project 2 will have a $100,000 cash inflow. A manager may choose to invest in project A just because it has a shorter payback period. $6,000 investment divided by $2,000 annual cash flow, or payback period of year 3. Whereas project B will only pay itself off sometime in year 5. But if the manager were to choose project B, huge cash flows would be missed out in year